Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids. They're going to put you all back in chains.
In my opinion, we don't need white people leading the Democratic Party right now. The Democratic Party is diverse, and it should be reflected as so in our leadership.
But I tell you, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, and you ain't black.
Why does this happen?
I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do this, Chuck, I'm not going to do this because let me just be really clear. Vice President Biden absolutely has a respect level for all people around him, for voters across this country, young people, older voters, voters of color, black people, Latino voters, indigenous, Asian American, Pacific Islander. So I'm not going to even traffic in any hypothetical conversation about if he is sensitive enough.
In my opinion, we don't need white people leading the Democratic Party right now.
Another thing about how perspectives change over time. Bobby Rush, member of Congress, said the other day, I'm ashamed that I voted for the '94 crime bill. You ashamed of that bill?
Not at all. In fact, I drafted the bill, as you remember.
I know that.
Unless we do something about that cadre of young people, tens of thousands of them, born out of wedlock, without parents, without supervision, without any structure, without any conscience developing, because they literally, I yield myself 3 more minutes, because they literally have not been socialized. They literally have not had an opportunity. We should focus on them now, not out of a liberal instinct for love, brother, and humanity, although I think that's a good instinct, but for simple pragmatic reasons. If we don't, they will, or a portion of them will, become the predators 15 years from now. And Madam President, we have predators on our streets that society has, in fact, in part because of its neglect, created. Again, it does not mean because we created them that we somehow forgive them or do not take them out of society to protect my family and yours from them. They are beyond the pale, many of those people. Beyond the pale. And it's a sad commentary on society. We have no choice but to take them out of society. Out of society. Every major crime bill that's come out of this Congress has had the name Joe Biden on that bill. We do everything but hang people for jaywalking in this bill.
Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids.
The 2020 race is Biden's third attempt at the Oval Office. He first ran for president 32 years ago. Here's what happened. Biden started off as a strong contender.
Senator Joseph R. Biden, Jr. of Delaware.
But his campaign was marred by some early blunders, like this one.
What law school did you attend, and where did you place in that class? And the other question is...
I think I probably have a much higher IQ than you do, I suspect.
Senator Joseph Biden may have more explaining to do. The new questions stem from taped remarks of Biden during an April campaign appearance in New Hampshire.
I went to law school on a full academic scholarship, the only one in my class to have a full academic scholarship. Went back to law school and, in fact, ended up in the top half of my class. I was the outstanding student in the political science department at the end of my year. I graduated with 3 degrees from undergraduate school and 165 credits, only needed 123 credits.
Biden now concedes he did not graduate in the top half of his law school class, that he does not have 3 degrees from college, and that he was not named outstanding.
Biden actually went to school on a half scholarship, ended up near the bottom of his class, and won only 1 degree, not 3.
Joe Biden ranked 76th in a class of 85 at the University of Syracuse Law School. I mean, this guy comes off this whole thing as a flyweight.
Now Biden says Newsweek is right. His memory had failed him.
And I'd be delighted to sit down and compare my IQ to yours if you'd like, Frank.
And then there were moments like this, repeated later during the campaign.
When I marched in the civil rights movement, I marched with tens of thousands of others to change attitudes.
But he never actually marched in the civil rights movement at all. Ultimately, it was accusations of plagiarism in his speeches.
I did not know that was a Robert Kennedy quote. My mistake.
That forced him to drop out of the race.
I made some mistakes.
Presidential candidate Joseph Biden today faces a controversy. 3 weeks ago at a debate at the Iowa State Fair, he used phrases identical to those delivered by British Labour Party leader Neil Kinnock.
Biden seemed to be claiming Kinnock's vision and life as his own.
Why is it that my wife is sitting out there in the audience, is the first in her family to ever go to college?
Why is Gladys the first woman in her family in 1,000 generations to be able to get to university?
My ancestors who worked in the coal mines in northeast Pennsylvania don't come up after 12 hours and play football.
8 hours underground, and then come up and play football.
It's because they didn't have a platform upon which to stand.
There was no platform upon which they could stand.
The notion that every thought or notion or idea you have to go back and find and attribute to someone, I think is, quite frankly, ludicrous.
The problem here is that Senator Biden told his audience he'd just been thinking about these things, and he failed to give any credit at all to his famous British speechwriter.
You know, I was thinking on the way over here. Now, that's a little too much, because, as you point out, what's behind the words? What's there? And a lot of people, the rap on Biden has always been that it's just a surface.
I should have said, to paraphrase Neil Kinnock, it's the only time I didn't, and all the times I've ever used it.
But CBS News found a tape of a second instance.
It reappeared in the New York Times with a new charge, that Biden had appropriated a famous litany from the late Robert Kennedy about what the gross national product cannot measure.
It cannot measure the health of our children,
The health of our children,
the quality of our education,
the quality of their education,
the joy of their play,
or the joy of their play.
Biden gave Kennedy no credit. He has also quoted or paraphrased John Kennedy, Hubert Humphrey, and British Labour Party leader Neil Kinnock, all without credit.
Joseph Biden admitted today that he committed plagiarism when he was in law school. He said it was a mistake, but that it was unintentional.
He quoted 5 pages of someone else's work without proper citation.
I've done some dumb things, and I'll do dumb things again.
He was given an F.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I've been dumb.
To the political community in Washington, it all seems of a piece. Plagiarism at law school, plagiarism on the stump.
It is appropriate to ask Professor Hill anything any member wishes to ask her to plumb the depths of her credibility.
After that, Biden stayed in the Senate, ran again in the 2008 race, became the vice presidential nominee, and then the vice president. And now we're here.
The boundaries of protecting personal space have been reset, and I get it.
And confidence. I've got a lot of thanks to give out here.
I'm coming back. I'm coming back. And I want to see these beautiful young ladies. I want to see them dancing when they're 4 years older, too. So it's great. And by the way, you know, I sit on the stand and it get hot. I got hairy legs that turn turn blonde in the sun. And the kids used to come up and reach in the pool and rub my leg down so it was straight, and then watch the hair come back up again. They look at it. So I learned about roaches. I learned about kids jumping on my lap. And I've loved kids jumping on my lap.
I don't think it's disqualifying. What I think that it's important for the Vice President and others to understand is it isn't what you intended, it's how it was received.
Unlike the African American community, with notable exceptions, the Latino community is an incredibly diverse community. Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids.
And other than the fact that they still call me boy, I think they've changed their mind about it.
They're gonna put you all back in chains.
The first sort of mainstream African American who was articulate and bright and clean and nice-looking guy. I mean, that's a storybook, man.
It was hurtful to hear you talk about the reputation of 2 United States senators who built their reputation and career on the segregation of race in this country.
Turn this primary from a campaign that's about negative attacks into one about what we're for, because we cannot get reelected. We cannot win this reelection. Excuse me, we can only reelect Donald Trump.
You cannot go to a 7-Eleven or a Dunkin' Donuts unless you have a slight Indian accent.
Excuse me, I got to get this right.
And why should the voters believe that you can win the national election?
I was a Democratic caucus. You ever been to a caucus? No, you haven't. You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier. No man has a right to raise a hand to a woman, and so we have to just change the culture, period, and keep punching at it and punching at it and punching at it. It will be a big... No, I really mean it.
This week I hear him literally say that I don't think we should legalize marijuana. I thought you might have been high when you said it. and let me tell you, because...
If you notice, I have more people supporting me in the black community that have announced for me. The only African-American woman that ever been elected to the United States Senate. The first African-American. Look, tomorrow's Superstar Tuesday, and I want to thank you all. I tell you what, I'm rushing ahead, aren't I? 150 million people have been killed since 2007 when Bernie voted to exempt the gun manufacturers from liability. It would put 720 million women back in the workforce. Nobody should be in jail for a nonviolent crime. My name's Joe Biden. I'm a Democratic candidate for the United States Senate. What's not to like about Vermont in terms of the beauty of it? And what a neat town. Play the radio. Make sure the television, make sure you have the record player on at night. The answer is I would, but I can't think of one now. No. Look here. No, I'm serious. No, here's what I mean. Let me explain that. You know, there's some really decent Republicans that are out there still. But here's the problem right now, of the well-known ones. They've got to step up. Whomever I would pick, were I fortunate enough to be your nominee, I'd pick someone who was simpatico